Okay, how's it going? Today I want to talk about a couple different types of renewable energies. These are things that can make us, more energy efficient. Things that we don't have to rely on fossil fuels. So we're going to talk about solar, hydro, and geothermal. So I'm going to flip through a few slides here real quick. Obviously, here you're seeing hydropower, which would be water, obviously. And you should know, hopefully, from past classes or just from, you know, um, things you've heard about. Tides are driven by the moon, so the distance the moon is from the Earth actually controls how strong or how much the tides move. So that's one of the things when we talk about hydro, we'll get into a little bit. Obviously, this looks like a little wind power here. However, it's actually it's think of it as like like a boat propeller in the water under the ocean that moves with the ocean currents, which is the way we can generate electricity. Virtually limitless amounts of electricity that we can generate this way. Obviously, there are some negatives in the sense that you're going to have. Pause for one sec. Obviously, one of the negatives here could be the propellers could be an issue for marine life, but there are some new technology kind of coming out there. And once again, this is from 2012, so this is we're talking almost a decade ago. So here when we talk about non-renewable versus potentially renewable versus non-depletable, so these are the ones that we need to focus on moving forward: wind, solar, hydro, and geothermal. Obviously, all the ones here at the top, these are all resources that eventually will run out. We can grow wood at a pretty high rate. However, it's questionable whether or not we can grow the quality that we need to produce the types of power that we would need to produce in the future. So, just to give you an example here, right, from what we're reliant upon, 87% of our energy is actually from non-renewable. So it's those fossil fuels, where only 13% is renewable. A lot of this has come, at least excuse me, in the last few years, it's come from the federal government actually giving people money, actually encouraging businesses in a tax relief standpoint to sell um, renewable energy sources, whether it be wind or solar. Solar is kind of the big one that you see all over the place now, on consumers' homes and those kind of things. I want to flip forward a little bit here. All right, I'm gonna go here. So there are obviously, if we're going to talk about solar power, there's a number of ways we can use solar power. Obviously, photosynthesis allows the production of our fossil fuels. So you can think about photosynthesis really drove the production of fuels um, that we use currently today, millions of years ago. Um, Obviously, some non-related stuff from solar would be nuclear, what have you, but we can use direct solar or sunlight during the course of the day. Wind is another feature of solar power in the sense that the unequal heating of the Earth's surface actually causes there to be winds. We can use heat from the ground, which once again could be from the sun, also could be from just the geothermal mechanisms that happen under the planet. And obviously, these are some things, these potentially renewables. Um, let's see. Okay, so let's talk. I want to talk about a couple different types of solar power that can be used. One way we can use solar, and this is how we did it probably back in like the early 70s, even into the 80s, is they would actually put these panels on your roof. Inside the panels, there'd either be water or some type of antifreeze type of solution. And what they would do is they would collect the heat from the solar radiation and then take that heat and transfer it to the liquids, which could then go into your hot water heater and be used for domestic hot water. So it's either heating the water directly or heating some type of liquid, which then heats your water indirectly. Um, Cold water supply, obviously, this is coming from the street or from your well, but this is how early heating system works. Ironically, we have one of these at the school. If you look over if you're looking at the fire station side of the school, and you look over the kind of the the locker rooms slash where the kitchen is for the cafeteria, you'll see these big angled solar panels up there. Excuse me. They're actually not collecting electricity. They're actually heating water and then putting it into a storage tank, which is right outside of Mr. Hortensia's office. Super cool. All right, another way we can do solar is doing photovoltaic cells, or PVs. This is pretty much what you see on most people's houses. There's a series of panels. Panels have to face a certain direction to capture the sun the best. They have to be at a certain angle to capture the sun's rays. Most of these are fixed. These panels don't move. From there, the electricity, there's a chemical reaction that takes place inside the panel. These cells then, as they get excited, there's this movement of electrons that happens, and those electrons are then captured as direct current, DC, which is like what your car runs on, or a battery, or your cell phone. And we convert the DC current, which is what we normally have in batteries, to AC current, and that AC current then goes into your house's electrical system and either feeds the outlets directly or goes right back into the grid, one or the other. I actually have these in my house. I have 37 solar panels. We use about 20 kilowatts of electricity a day at my house, so about 600 a month in the non-summer months. On a good month, I produce 1,800 kilowatts a day, and I'm only using 600. So what happens is, for the additional wattage I don't use, I get to bank that. So in the summertime, let's say if I was only using 600, which I use more than that, but if I use 600 as a number, I'm using about somewhere in the neighborhood of 7,200 kilowatts a year. I probably generate about 12,000 kilowatts a year. So I'm generating about 4,000 to 5,000 more than I actually use. I get to bank that. It kind of goes into my electric bill as a credit. Plus, I also get paid for all the electricity that we make. Now, granted, it's about a wash in the sense that I don't have an electric bill anymore. However, the panels were $42,000, so there's a expense to that up front. But after 10 years, panels will be paid off, and I'll have never have an electric bill again, which is crazy. All right, but this is what they call, this is active solar. So you're actually using the solar energy to create electricity. Passive solar would be if I was sitting in here on the couch, or sitting in here, making this video, and the sun shines through the windows and heats the interior of my home while I'm inside. That's called passive solar. We see this a lot with the type of windows they put in homes. So you put certain types of windows in that allow, in the wintertime, the sunlight to heat the interior of the room, but in the summertime they actually reflect the heat off. It's a pretty neat concept. We'll try to get into that maybe one of the future videos. So here's a typical house, kind of similar to my house in the sense of a ranch style house, with the solar panels attached. Pretty straightforward. Each one of these panels is roughly 3 feet by 2 feet, depending on the type of installation. Okay. All right. So this is a different type of solar panel array. These in the sense of these ones here, this is something you would see in an industrial setting. So what's happening here is these the mirrors. Notice the panels are spread out all around this tower here. All right. The way this works is these panels are way more expensive, way more efficient than the ones you'd have at your home. They're set up in a larger array in order to catch the sun from every angle. These produce large amounts of heat, reflective heat, and large amounts of electricity. This is why they can't use these on consumer homes. So the heat that they generate is part of the issue. So another type besides solar, so we looked at solar can be a couple different things. It can be passive, where it comes directly through your windows, heats the interior of your house. It can be active solar, where you're actually taking the light energy and creating electricity. Another type of energy source we can use is what's called a heat pump, or geothermal energy. So the ground pretty much stays, if you go below 3 or 4 feet in the ground, even up here in New England, the ground stays fairly warm, about 55 degrees or so. If you keep going further down, it stays 55 to 60 degrees. So there's this technology of using geothermal. Actually, the houses on Surrey Lane, East Bridgewater, are all geothermal powered, and they use this type of system. So there's some type of if you have an air conditioning, an AC unit at home like that is outside, like a central air conditioning unit, you have this thing called a compressor, and then your furnace or your AC unit in your home somewhere is a heat exchanger. Okay, and this expansion valve, it just allows for the liquid to move, to get larger and smaller. So imagine that. So we take this pump, right, and we take cold water or cold liquid and we pump it using electricity down into the ground through a pipe. Let's say it goes down 60, 70, 80 feet. If the liquid is below 55 degrees, it's going to absorb heat from the ground. As that and as you compress it, you actually increase the amount of heat that's there when you start to compress the liquid, all right, which causes friction. So they take that 55-degree water or liquid, whatever happens is they start, and it gets compressed, so it changes from 55 degrees to maybe 75, 80 degrees. They can then take that liquid, run it through a heat exchanger, which is basically, think of like a fan, right? If there was think of like a box fan behind this, and what happens is the fan blows air across the heated pipes. The heat dissipates or leaves the pipes and then blows into your room, and the cooler liquid goes back, goes down, gets reheated, so on and so forth. All right, this is called a heat pump, and it uses geothermal technology or the warmth um, of the ground. The negative to this is that you can only get the heat so hot. It might and everything requires electricity. The pump requires electricity. The compressor requires electricity. The heat exchanger requires electricity. All of these things require electricity. So you still have to have a way to power that. Solar panels would be a good option. The other thing that goes on here too is that you can run it the opposite way. So I can run if I can pull warm air out of the atmosphere through these tubes, right? And I can run it down through really flip flop. I would run it down into the ground. I'd push it down into the ground with some type of pump. I can take the warm liquid, dissipate the heat out of it, get it cool to about 55, 60 degrees, and I can pump that liquid back through the heat exchanger with a fan, and I can cool the atmosphere down as well. So you can actually use these systems for heating and cooling. It's very common out in the western part of the country. Why? It's a way to cool houses down. Think of it, if you're living in Arizona, New Mexico, one of those places. You put a system like this in, the ground stays 55 degrees. That's pretty cool. You can take the hot air out of your house through this piping system, pump the liquid down into the ground, cool the liquid. As the cold liquid comes back up or cool liquid comes back up, you can blow air across it, once again cooling the inside of your home, as opposed to using just your regular window air conditioner. Pretty neat though. So that's geothermal. Let's see here. Let's talk a little bit about wind. Wind is really going to be part of the solar family, if you will. So the way this works, wind turbines, it's super straightforward. There's if you've ever taken apart, or if you ever looked at like I don't know, like a little remote control car has like a little electric engine in it, or your ceiling fan at home has an electric motor inside of it. When you energize the motor, when you turn the switch on, and you energize the motor in the ceiling fan, you run electricity to it, the blades spin. Okay, the opposite is true. If you took that ceiling fan off the ceiling and you mechanically spun the blades, what would happen is you'd actually generate electricity. This is the technology that they're using here. So think of this as like a big ceiling fan. Instead of running electricity into it and making it spin, you run wind past it, make it spin, turn a generator, create electricity, and then you can run that electricity to the electrical grid. Obviously, this really depends on wind, which depends on the unequal heating of your surface. All right. This is something typical you're starting to see, these wind turbines on the water. We see them all over the place on land. I know there's pros and cons to the aesthetics of them, but this is one of these things we need to think about. If our population is going to still rise and we have a demand for electricity, we're going to need more things like this. The big one that you've probably heard about is Cape Wind. Cape Wind is a corporation or public entity that wants to build in the Nantucket Sound, which is if you're looking at the Cape, it's the elbow of the Cape. They're looking to build a wind farm, somewhere in the neighborhood of a 2 to 3 mile square wind farm in Nantucket Sound, and it's been put off and put off and put off. It would look similar to this. You'd have these turbines out there. You have a lot of the people that live in those areas, whether it be Nantucket or the elbow of the Cape, that don't want it because of the visual impact that it's going to have. It's hard to say where we can go with this. So this is, if you notice here, this is giving you obviously the book was written in 2012, so we don't have any data after this. But you see this curve, and we've unfortunately been seeing a lot of this in the news lately. We have this exponential growth of how many gigawatts, which is a huge number. It's in millions of watts of electricity that is produced by wind on an annual basis. So I mean, we're definitely getting there. I would make the assumption if we were to stretch this out to 2020, this curve would still be going in that same place. I mean, you think about all the windmills that have popped up just on the South Shore. I know you guys just recently started driving, but I can remember the first windmill around was in Hull at the high school, right on the point there, Allerton Point. And now you can't you can't go 5 or 6 miles now on the South Shore without coming in seeing a windmill, especially if you head towards the Plymouth area. They're all over the place. Same thing with going north towards New Hampshire, Vermont. They're becoming more prevalent. And I know a few of you that get a chance to go to France last year, if you went to the Loire Valley or to the Monet trip that they had, when you left Paris proper, the main city of Paris, and you get into the suburbs, you would see windmills all over the place there. So they've really made an investment to go this way. So I'm going to stop here so that kind of give you a little introduction to wind, solar, hydro. We'll do a little bit more later, but right now that just kind of gives you a quick intro. I'm also going to add along with this presentation, I'm going to throw in there a question for you to try. It'll be a free response question, and then we'll host hopefully on Thursday sometime a little Google chat to go over that question. All right, have a good day.